Soft piano begins, then fades into a low heartbeat. I grew up believing my father was dead. That's how my story begins. At least, that's what I was told. When I was just 2 years old, my mother said he died in a fire. No grave, no photographs, no stories, just ashes and silence. And from that day on, she never spoke his name again, not once. For 25 years, that silence followed me like a ghost. I carried it everywhere, in every laugh, every quiet night, and in every unanswered question that sat heavy in my chest. I told myself it didn't matter, that the past was gone. But deep down, I knew silence always hides something. Then last month, everything changed. It started with something so ordinary it almost felt meaningless. I donated blood, a small act, 15 minutes of my time, but that single decision would tear my life wide open. The mobile clinic was parked outside a grocery store in Austin, Texas. The volunteer smiled at me. 15 minutes can save a life, he said. I thought I was just doing something good. I had no idea it was my life that was about to be saved or shattered. A week later, while I was tightening bolts under the hood of a pickup at the shop, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something made me answer. Mr. Rowe? The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but too careful. This is Dr. Stevens from the Texas Regional Blood Center. I'm calling regarding your donation. My stomach dropped. Instantly, I thought, am I sick? Did they find something? There was a pause, the kind that makes your heart pound in your ears. Your results flagged an anomaly, he said. Nothing dangerous, but significant. We recommend you come in. What kind of anomaly? I asked. Another pause, and then his tone shifted. Softer. Heavier. Mr. Rowe, I can't explain over the phone, but I can give you an address in New York. If you go there, you'll find answers. New York? I didn't know a soul there. What do you mean? I said, confused. He hesitated. The anomaly relates to your family history. That's all I can say. Family history. Two words that hit harder than I expected. That night, I sat across from my mother at our tiny kitchen table. She looked exhausted, her nurse's scrubs still creased, her eyes dim from another long shift. I wanted to ask her, to just say it. But one look at her face, the tired sadness in her eyes, and I couldn't. So instead, I stayed silent. And the silence, it screamed louder than any answer ever could. For days, I couldn't focus. Every word from that call replayed in my mind. Anomaly, family history, address in New York. I'd never been to New York, never wanted to. But something about that voice, calm but heavy, made it impossible to ignore. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was instinct. After 3 sleepless nights, I packed a single backpack, a few clothes, my wallet, the paper with the address scribbled on it. I called my mother before I left. She answered on the third ring. Mom, I said quietly, I need to know about Dad. Silence, the same silence that had filled my childhood. Only this time it felt different. It felt like she was holding something back, something that scared her. Finally, she whispered, Ethan, some things are better left in the past. I hung up. My hands were shaking. And that's when I knew I had to go. So I boarded a plane to New York. No plan, no idea what I was walking into, just a strange address, and the feeling that my entire life had been built on a lie. When I landed, the air felt colder, sharper somehow. The city moved fast, loud, alive, but I barely noticed. Every step I took toward that address felt heavier. When I finally stood in front of the door, my heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my throat. I knocked once. The door opened, and there he was, a man, maybe in his 50s, standing in a simple gray sweater, a mug of coffee in his hand. He looked at me, and in that moment, the world stopped. The mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. He didn't move, didn't breathe. His lips trembled as he whispered one word, my name, Ethan. It wasn't a question, it was recognition. I froze. I didn't even know what to feel, confusion, fear, hope, because the man standing in front of me looked like me. Same eyes, same hair, same tiny scar above the eyebrow, the one I thought was just mine. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Then he said quietly, I knew this day would come. My knees nearly gave out. I wanted to shout, to demand answers. Who are you? But deep down, I already knew. That night, sitting in his living room, the truth began to unfold piece by piece. The story I'd lived my whole life believing, about the fire, about his death, was a lie. He wasn't dead, he'd been hiding. And the worst part, he wasn't hiding from us. He was hiding for us. He told me things I still can't fully process, That before I was born, he worked in a government research division. Not science, not medicine, but something far more secretive. Something that involved classified identities, false records, and a betrayal that put his family in danger. When the fire happened, it wasn't an accident. It was staged, a cover up to erase him from existence. My mother knew. She helped him disappear. And she kept that secret for 25 years. He said he'd watched me grow up from afar, that every year on my birthday, he made a donation in my name to a hospital fund in Austin. He thought it was his way of staying close. But hearing that didn't make the years of emptiness any easier to bear. I sat there in silence, listening to a man who was both a stranger and my father. And when he said, "I'm sorry, son," I didn't even know which part he was apologizing for, leaving, lying, or surviving. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't, because every piece of the puzzle, every hidden look from my mother, every unanswered question finally started to make sense. The clinic, though, that part still didn't. So I asked him, "What did they find in my blood?" He hesitated, and for the first time that night I saw fear in his eyes. "They weren't supposed to find it," he said quietly. "Not after all these years." "What?" I demanded. "Find what?" He looked away, exhaled, and said, "There's something in your DNA, Ethan, something they've been looking for since before you were even born." My skin went cold. "Looking for me?" I said. He nodded slowly. "They thought it was gone when I disappeared, but when you donated blood, you gave them a trail." The room went silent, and in that silence I realized this wasn't just a family secret anymore. This was something much bigger. I looked at him, trying to read the truth in his face. But before I could speak, there was a sound, faint, outside the window. A car engine, then doors closing. He turned toward the sound, his expression changing completely. Not fear, not surprise, recognition. "They found us," he whispered. Then everything happened fast. He grabbed a small black duffel from under the couch, motioned for me to move. "Ethan, listen to me carefully," he said. "Whatever happens next, you cannot call your mother. Not yet. Not until I explain everything." I tried to speak. "What's going on?" But he cut me off. "There isn't time." Through the window, I saw shadows moving. Two men in dark coats approaching the house. One of them lifted something, a small device, flashing red. My father, the man I just found, turned to me and said, "Everything your mother did, every lie she told, it was to protect you." Then the window shattered, glass breaking, static, fade to silence. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed. White walls, blinding light, a nurse asking my name. But here's the thing. No one knew who brought me there. No one knew what happened to the man in that house. There was no record of him, not in public files, not in police reports, not even in the property records for that address. As if he'd vanished again. All I had left was that one slip of paper, the address, and a single question echoing in my mind. If my father really did die once before, what happens now that he's alive? And what or who are they still trying to find through me? Long pause, slow heartbeat returns. Because something tells me this story isn't over, not even close. Music swells. Faint whisper, "They found us." For 25 years, I believed my father was dead, a name never spoken, a story never told, just silence and a single memory that wasn't even mine. But silence has a way of whispering, especially when it hides something the world was never meant to know. When the truth finally came for me, it didn't arrive with thunder. It started with a phone call and the sound of my mother crying on the other end. For a long, fragile moment, I thought the line had gone dead. Then she whispered, voice shaking with something that felt like fear, "Ethan, please don't go. Some doors should stay closed." Those words hit me harder than I expected, because she had said them before, years ago, when I was 16 and asked why there were no pictures of my father. That same tone, that same trembling fear had ended the conversation before it ever began. But this time, I wasn't a child anymore, and I was done living inside her silence. "That's exactly why I have to go, Mom," I said quietly. "I can't live in the dark anymore. I can't keep pretending half of me never existed." Her sobs came through the phone, soft at first, then breaking into sharp, gasping cries. "You don't understand," she said. "I did everything to protect you." "Protect me from what?" I demanded. But there was no answer, just her breathing, heavy, uneven, and full of the same pain that had hung between us my entire life. And that's when I knew she would never tell me. Whatever truth she carried was too heavy, too dangerous, too deep for her to let go of. So I made the choice for both of us. That night, I booked a last-minute flight to New York. No plan, no explanations, just a single piece of paper in my pocket, an address that burned against my leg like fire. As I packed my backpack, every movement felt surreal. A few clothes, my wallet, my phone charger, and that address, folded so tight it could have been a secret itself. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the photo of me and my mother from my high school graduation. Her arm wrapped around me, her smile tired but proud. For the first time, I wondered if she'd always known this day would come, the day her silence wouldn't be enough to keep me from the truth. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside, my thoughts spiraling through every possibility. Was the address a hospital? A research lab? A stranger who knew my father? Or was it something darker? Something she'd spent her life keeping me away from? By dawn, I had my answer. I couldn't stay. When I walked into the kitchen, my mother was already there, standing by the counter in her robe, both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. Her eyes were red. She had been crying all night. "Ethan," she whispered, "please don't go." "I have to," I said, and even though my voice was steady, my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. She reached for me, her fingers trembling as they touched my arm. "You don't understand what you're walking into." "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me what I'm walking into." Her hand fell away. Tears filled her eyes, but she only shook her head. "I can't." That was it. That was the last time I saw her before everything changed. I kissed her cheek, whispered that I loved her, and walked out the door. She didn't stop me, not this time. The airport was chaos. People rushing, luggage rolling, announcements echoing overhead. But it all felt distant, like the world was moving in fast forward, and I was the only one still in slow motion. When the plane lifted off, I looked out the window and watched the lights of Austin fade beneath the clouds. The city that had been my whole world, the only world I'd ever known, was shrinking to nothing. And all I could think was, by the time I land, nothing will ever be the same again. The flight felt endless. I stared at the crumpled note in my hand, the address written in blue ink, 48 Mercer Street, Brooklyn. I searched it on my phone. Nothing. Just an ordinary street in an ordinary neighborhood. No hospital, no clinic, no business name. That unsettled me even more. Whatever waited for me there wasn't official. It was personal. As the plane cut through gray clouds, I found myself imagining him, the man my mother never spoke of. Was he kind, violent, weak, brave? Did he leave her to protect us or to save himself? Every version of him told a different story about who I was, and I needed to know which one was real. When I landed at LaGuardia, New York, hit me like a storm. The air was colder, sharper. The city roared, cabs honking, people shouting, life moving faster than I could keep up. I felt small, but I also felt alive. I checked into a cheap hotel in Brooklyn, peeling wallpaper, buzzing lights, the smell of bleach heavy in the air. I sat on the bed and stared at my phone, thinking about calling my mother. But what was there left to say? She'd beg me to come home. She'd say some doors should stay closed, and I'd tell her I was opening it anyway, so I didn't call. The next morning, I walked the streets of Brooklyn with the address in my hand. Every step made my heart beat faster. The city felt endless, a blur of noise and faces, and yet I'd never felt more alone. When I finally turned the corner onto Mercer Street, everything went quiet. It was an ordinary block, red brick buildings, small shops, a cafe on the corner, but one door, one ordinary brown door, felt heavier than anything I'd ever faced. Number 48. Brass numbers nailed slightly crooked above the frame. Nothing remarkable about it, and yet it felt like the entire weight of my life was behind that door. I stood across the street for nearly 10 minutes, frozen. My chest tight, my hands clammy. I wanted to run, to go back to Texas, to forget this ever started. But then I thought of every birthday without him. Every night my mother's silence swallowed my questions, and I knew if I turned away now, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. So I crossed the street, climbed the steps, raised my fist, and knocked. 3 soft knocks that echoed louder than any sound I'd ever made. For a moment, nothing happened. I almost walked away. Then, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. The door opened. A man stood in the doorway, gray streaks through his dark hair, a coffee mug in his hand, eyes tired but alive. When our eyes met, everything inside me stopped, because his eyes were mine. He froze. The mug slipped from his hand, shattering on the concrete. He didn't even flinch. He just stared at me like he was staring at a ghost. "Ethan," he breathed. My throat went dry. "Yes," I said. "I'm Ethan." He pressed a trembling hand to the doorframe, his face pale, tears forming in the corners of his eyes. "My son," he whispered. My knees almost buckled. For 25 years, I'd imagined this moment, what I'd say, what I'd feel, but nothing could have prepared me for it. The man who was supposed to be dead was standing in front of me, alive. "You're supposed to be dead," I said. The words came out broken, more disbelief than anger. His lips trembled. "Please, come inside. Let me explain." Every instinct screamed to demand answers right there, but something in his eyes, shame, desperation, love, pulled me across the threshold. The apartment was small and cluttered, filled with papers, old books, the faint scent of coffee and dust. A life hidden in plain sight. I sat on the couch. He sat across from me, hands shaking as he set another mug down between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, he said the words that changed everything. "My name is Daniel Hale," he said softly. "I'm your father." The room spun. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The blood in my veins already knew it. But hearing him say it, hearing the truth my mother had buried for decades, was something else entirely. He took a deep breath. "I didn't die in that fire, Ethan. I survived. But surviving wasn't the end of it. It was only the beginning." His voice broke. Back then, I was caught up in things I should never have touched. Dangerous people. Dangerous deals. When I tried to walk away, they came after me. The fire, it wasn't an accident. It was meant to kill me. When it didn't, I knew staying would only put you and your mother in danger. "So you left," I said, the words sharp and bitter. "You left us." He looked at me, eyes filled with something between guilt and grief. "I disappeared to keep you alive." My stomach twisted. I thought of my mother. The long nights, the double shifts, the quiet tears she thought I didn't see, all the birthdays she made special just so I wouldn't feel what we were missing. And the silence, the endless silence she carried for him. "You call that protecting us?" I snapped. "You left her to bury a man who wasn't even dead. You let her lie to me every single day of my life." He lowered his gaze. "I know," he whispered, "and I have lived with that every day since." I wanted to hate him. I wanted to walk out and never look back. But beneath the anger, there was something else, something that terrified me, because a part of me believed him. He looked at me again, his voice lower now, almost trembling. "You shouldn't have come here, Ethan. The moment you did, they knew." My heart froze. "Who knew?" He didn't answer. He just looked toward the window, the same haunted look my mother had when she said some doors should stay closed. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking. "What's going on?" He closed his eyes, whispering more to himself than to me. "It's too late now." Outside, somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed. Then another. He opened his eyes, and in them I saw the same fear my mother tried to hide all those years. He stood, motioned toward the back hallway. "Ethan, listen to me very carefully. No matter what happens next, you don't call your mother. Not yet." "Why?" I demanded. But he didn't answer. He just turned toward the window and went completely still. I followed his gaze. Two men, dark coats, standing across the street, watching the building. He took a slow breath. "They found us." The words barely left his mouth when glass shatters, a sound like thunder. And in that instant, I knew my life wasn't built on silence anymore. It was built on something far more dangerous, and whatever I had just walked into was only the beginning. "You let me grow up thinking you were dead." The words shot out of me before I could stop them. My voice cracked with 25 years of anger I'd buried too deep. He didn't flinch. He didn't fight back. He just looked down, his shoulders heavy, his voice trembling. "Every day, Ethan, every single day, I thought about you. But if I came back, they would have found you. I had to make a choice. I chose to protect you, even if it meant you'd hate me." That line hit like a blow. Protect me? From what? From who? My fists clenched, my chest burned. "You could have told me," I snapped. "When I was older, when it was safe, a letter, a message, something. Instead, I grew up with nothing. Do you know how many nights I stared at that empty chair at the dinner table? How many times I asked Mom about you, and she just cried and said, 'Some things are better left in the past.'" He didn't look at me. He just sat there, broken. a man who had carried his guilt like a shadow that never left his side. The father I had imagined all my life wasn't this. He wasn't tired and gray and trembling. He was supposed to be strong, proud, alive. But the man in front of me was a ghost of his own choices. "You're right," he said quietly, his eyes glassy. "I failed you. I failed both of you. But I'm here now, and I'll answer everything. You can walk away after that if you want, but please, let me tell you the truth." I wanted to scream at him, to tell him it was too late. But something in his voice, that mix of pain and pleading, made me stop. The fury didn't fade, but it twisted into something else. Curiosity, grief, hope. For the first time in my life, I had a chance to look into the eyes of the man who had given me half of who I was. He leaned forward, voice trembling but steady. "Ethan, I never stopped loving you. Every sacrifice I made, every mile I put between us, it was all for you. And seeing you now, alive, grown, strong, it's more than I ever thought I'd deserve." The words scraped against every scar I had. I wanted to hate him. God, I wanted to. But beneath that hate was something even more dangerous, the desire to believe him. We sat in silence, two men bound by blood, divided by time. The air between us was thick, heavier than any words we could find. For the first time in 25 years, the silence between father and son cracked open. And what poured out wasn't clean or easy. It was raw, human, real. When I finally walked out of his apartment that night, New York felt different. The city lights blurred into streaks. Cars hissed past on wet asphalt. My legs felt like they were moving through cement. I had met my father. He was alive. Not a ghost, not a story. A man. I made it back to my hotel, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the ceiling. The air conditioner buzzed softly, the kind of background noise that felt too normal for a night like this. I wanted to hate him. I still did. But the truth had a strange way of cutting both ways. His story about danger, about people hunting him, about the fire that was meant to erase him, didn't fix the pain, but it made sense. For the first time in my life, I had answers. And answers, even painful ones, feel better than silence. The next morning, my phone felt like a weight in my hand. I stared at my mother's number for a long time before pressing call. When she picked up, her voice was small. "Ethan," my throat tightened. "Mom," I said softly, "I met him." There was a pause, long, trembling, almost empty. Then I heard it. Her sob, raw, uncontrolled, the sound of years of secrets breaking apart. "I knew this day would come," she whispered. "You knew?" My voice cracked. "You knew he was alive?" "Yes." Her voice was barely audible. "He begged me to keep you safe. He swore that if he stayed away, they would never find us." I believed him, Ethan. I kept his secret because I thought it was the only way you'd grow up free. The room spun. I thought of her working late nights, her tired smile, her constant silence whenever his name came up. All those years, all those lies had been built on fear. "You could have told me," I said. My voice softened without my permission. "You didn't have to let me think he was dead." She cried quietly. "I thought the lie would hurt less than the truth. I thought if you hated him, you wouldn't go searching. I thought I was protecting you." I closed my eyes. The anger I'd carried toward her for years began to shift, not disappear, but change shape. She hadn't lied to control me. She'd lied to protect me. It didn't make it right, but it made it human. When I got back to Texas, the house felt smaller, like the truth had crowded into every wall, every corner, every memory. My mother and I sat at the same kitchen table where months before I'd begged her to tell me about my father. This time she didn't look away. "He told me everything," I said quietly, "about the fire, about the danger, about why he left." She nodded slowly, her hands shaking around her coffee cup. "And do you believe him?" I hesitated. Then I told her the truth. "I want to, I think I do. But believing him doesn't erase the years he missed. It doesn't erase us." She stared at me with tired, watery eyes. "I never wanted you to carry that pain." I reached out and took her hand. "You gave me everything you could, Mom. I see that now. But I needed the truth, even if it hurt." Her tears came fast then, falling freely. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like we were standing on opposite sides of a locked door. For the first time, we were together, in the open. Weeks passed. I started talking to Daniel, my father, on the phone. At first, it was awkward. Every word felt careful, like stepping across a bridge that could collapse at any second. But slowly, stories began to unfold. He told me about his childhood, about the mistakes that led him into debt with dangerous people, about the fire that was never an accident, about the nights he watched us from a distance, unable to get close. "Did you ever think about coming back?" I asked one night. "Even when it wasn't safe?" His voice cracked. "Every day. I saw your school pictures through people I trusted. I watched you grow from a boy into a man, and it killed me not to be there. But I told myself that if you lived free of my mistakes, it was worth it. I just never thought you'd come knocking on my door." I didn't know what to say. His words didn't erase the years. They couldn't. But they stitched something inside me, slowly, unevenly. But they did. For the first time, I wasn't a boy defined by what was missing. I wasn't half a person chasing ghosts. I was whole, even if the pieces didn't fit perfectly. The truth wasn't neat. It wasn't clean. It wasn't forgiveness wrapped in a bow. It was messy. It hurt, but it was real. I learned that love can wound when it's twisted by fear, that silence can protect but also destroy, and that sometimes the truth isn't a clean answer, it's a jagged edge you learn to live with. One night, I sat in my room staring at the old graduation photo of me and my mother. For years, I used to wonder what it would have looked like if my father had been there, standing beside us, smiling. Now I knew, and even though I could never reclaim those lost years, I could carry both of them with me. The mother who protected me with silence, the father who sacrificed presence for safety. The story I grew up believing was a lie, but the truth I found was far more powerful. For 25 years, I lived under the weight of silence, believing my father was gone, burned in a fire that took everything from us. But now, I know better. Because some ghosts don't haunt you from the grave. They haunt you from across the city, waiting behind doors you were never supposed to open. And once you do, once the truth steps out into the light, there's no going back. Because the truth, no matter how painful, changes everything. And sometimes it's only after everything burns that you finally see what was real all along. But here's the thing, what if that wasn't the end? What if the danger that drove him away wasn't as gone as he believed? Because a few nights after I came home, I found something strange. A small envelope, no return address. Inside was a photo, me, standing outside his apartment, taken from across the street, and written on the back were 4 words that made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't have found him.